Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Baghian. I am president at Watershed Advisors, and we are joined today by the great John Bailey of Great Fame to talk all things AI and education. Before we jump into that, John, why don't you do a quick introduction and we'll get to it.
Great. It's so good to be with you all. John Bailey, I'm a non-resident senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. I also have the great privilege of working with a number of philanthropies and investors and CEOs on a whole range of different topics, from education to healthcare, mental health, future of work, and then AI is like a cross current through all of that. Previously, I had the chance to work at the White House, Department of Commerce, Department of Education, but I got my start in Pennsylvania working for then Governor Tom Ridge at the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So such a joy to be with you today.
Thanks, John. You have literally been in all parts of government. And the reason we wanted to invite you on today was because, in addition to that, as a person who knows how to use government to get things done, you have become, at least for me, my go-to source on all things AI. I'm a bit of a tech dinosaur myself. And so it's been great to follow and learn from all of the insights and, following of AI and its development that you've been able to share. So let's just start really basic, which is, what is your relationship with AI in your daily life?
Oh gosh, yeah, it's probably too close of a relationship. There was I think some of us, most of us got Spotify Wraps at the end of 2025. I got a ChatGPT Wrap. It is said
Amazing.
I was a 0.1% top user. Which then on Twitter, Sam Altman said he didn't even break 1%. So somehow I'm using ChatGPT more than Sam Altman. That's probably a cry for help. For me, actually, it's I think what it's shown is that I am just using not just ChatGPT, but Claude and Gemini and a whole bunch of other products to elicit perplexity. I mean, just a number of different things. And for me, it's a reflection of just how much it's just become part of my daily life, like in work and also just in just living. And it's not just in writing. I think a lot of people just think of Gen AI as like something you go to get an answer or to write something for you. And for me, it's been a whole range of other different kinds of uses. And it's been everything from cooking and going shopping and being overwhelmed with all the ingredients that you could choose from in the shelf. But if you have a recipe open in ChatGPT, you could take a picture and say, what's the right can of tomatoes or what's the right wine to go with this dish. And it'll just be an assistant for you. And then also, I just wrote about this recently too, but my mom had a recurrence of her lung cancer. And so I ended up building two different types of AI assistants to help us navigate that, one for her, one for me, and then use a couple of AI tools. And that's been just such a game changer. Called two medical errors from the doctor, surface to treatment to help manage nausea. And so there's just the more you play with these tools, the more you just kind of realize all the different ways you can use it other than writing. It's just to help make sense of the world and hopefully make your life a little bit better and a little bit more productive.
That all makes sense. And I think in AI, I am most using it for recipes and we're about to buy a van. Which van should I buy?
Oh
That
gosh.
sort of
Yeah, which
stuff.
event? Yeah.
Um, but in education, when I think back to my time in the classroom, uh, that feels tricky to me. And so when you look out in the, edu sector, especially state level and district level, which is where we spend the majority of our time, there's a big push for, state chiefs need to lead in AI. And in candor, I'm a little skeptical of that, not because we shouldn't. We should be responsible in looking at this, but also it's evolving so fast. And I do worry about an education leader who is excellent at knowing how to teach someone to read, being the person who's then supposed to shepherd a technology that's changing day by day feels really tricky to me and maybe even unreasonable. And so I'm curious, how are you thinking about AI in education? Who should be holding center on this?
Mhm.
Um,
No,
what's your advice to state chiefs on that?
I think great questions. I think also legitimate concerns there as well. Even this morning, I had two calls with people who are like, I just feel the pace at which this technology is changing just keeps me off balance.
Yes.
And it's who's on top on the leaderboard? Is it Gemini this week or Claude this week? I love the CEO of Anthropic. He wrote an essay last year. He also just came up with an updated essay this year that kind of doubles down on this, but it says by 2027, we'll have AI systems that have generally four different types of capabilities. One, it'll be smarter in multiple domains, as smart as a Nobel Prize winner in multiple domains. Two, it'll be able to be more multimodal. It can see, it can talk, it can listen, as well as like read text and spit back text. Um, but also it'll reason and it'll think through things. And then the third is that it'll spend more time working on a problem. So right now, when someone goes in to ChatGPT and says, "Give me a lesson plan," they'll get a lesson plan in like 20 seconds. If you use deep research on any of the tools, it'll think for 20 minutes and then it'll give you a 40-page document. And there's a lot of power that unlocks when you let an AI system think and work for hours, days, and weeks. And you can kind of see a glide path for that. And then lastly is like robotics, which means a little bit less for us in education. But what I love about that framework, he thinks that'll all happen by 2027. Now, he could be wrong. He could be wrong on the date. Maybe it's 2029. But what I find is helpful for leaders is that that gives something to orient to that gets you out of the whiplash of like who's on top on the leaderboard. And you can start saying, if that is true,
Yeah.
then what? What does that mean for us as a state agency? What does that mean for our teachers? But it unlocks some use cases. It surfaces risk in a bunch of different ways. But I think a lot of this for the state leaders I work with, including on the healthcare side, everyone in state government's wrestling with this. Like, what's the appropriate use of AI in our functions? When should a human be absolutely in the loop versus, other things that we can just have AI just do and automate on itself? I think a lot of states are wrestling with the policies for school districts. And, honestly, I think it's like too soon for a top down heavy handed policy of thou shall do this and thou shall not do that. But I think asking districts and require districts to develop their own acceptable use policies is very much is appropriate, and also is the way that we've handled other disruptive technologies in the past. When the internet first came out, all the districts had to develop an acceptable use policy around what was appropriate and inappropriate uses of the internet. And when Wikipedia came out, people did the same thing. We really need schools and community with their teachers and with their parents developing what are the guardrails and the right and appropriate and inappropriate uses for their students as well.
And I think you're right. This is not the first time we've had this disruption. And also, I'm sitting here thinking about two things. One, I'm thinking about all of the momentum nationally right now around cell phone bans and, commitment to not give kids to social media until they're 16, those types of things. And I'm also thinking about my own lived experience as a mom of three and the lawsuits happening right now against, the big tech giants on social media. The lack of regulation is a little bit scary, even if your point about it being premature does resonate. Because I don't think these, at least in the social media sector, those institutions have shown themselves to be always responsible shepherds of, the safety of 9-year-olds. And I'm curious, and AI, I think, has the potential to be even perhaps more disruptive than, the social media lane, certainly. So how do you think about that? Like, are there regulations states should be passing, feds should be passing? What is a responsible version of doing that without over
Yeah.
restricting the innovation and national or international leadership, I should say?
No, it's a great question. I think you're exactly right too. We now have enough early evidence, I think, from these early versions of Gen AI to suggest in some ways I've heard like social media's incentive is around attention and that keeps you scrolling. There's for some AI systems a perverse sort of incentive around attachment. And you see this there's some really powerful capabilities of these tools to mimic empathy and understanding. And that cuts two ways. That could be really powerful because empathy could be great in encouraging a burnout teacher. Empathy could be great in terms of encouraging a student that just wants to give up on their math homework. I saw these tools be really powerful with my mom in terms of being empathetic and understanding as she was navigating her cancer. So empathy is like a dial and a tool, but on the perverse side of that, it can lead to attachment. It can distort a lot of social norms. Julia Freeland Fisher has written a lot about this, about worry that is like people turn to an AI system to talk and develop a relationship with it that's coming at the sacrifice of real human relationships. And so I think we're seeing bits and pieces of this in some tragic cases where kids are engaging in these systems and having suicide ideation, self-harm conversations, and committing suicide in some cases. But even if you separate the kids, there are these very strange cases of adults college educated, upper income, that are engaging with the systems and entering into a weird AI generated psychosis. And the thing is, the model frontier labs don't exactly know what's happening there. And so it's
Mhm.
hard for them to know like what's the best way to address it. And you're seeing right now laws and policies around the typical playbook we saw with social media. So to age gate it, have some parent controls and other kind of limitations there. I think that's a starting point. It feels insufficient for me. And for me, where I think we need to lean in is that, all these frontier labs before they release a new model, they test it and red team it and benchmark it against a bunch of different sort of existential harms. It's around, can it help accelerate nuclear, biological, chemical, agents? There's a cyber risk as part of it. I think we need to add mental health as part of that too. And I want the labs to take the mental health issues with these tools for kids and as for adults just generally as seriously as they do about the potential harms of this accelerating the development of a biological weapon. Um, and that can be done through policy. I testified in Congress and suggested this, but states could be doing that as well. But I think we need to get ahead of this because there's enough early indicators to say that this could be a pretty harmful thing to kids, but also there's some really beneficial aspects of it too. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. You want to be able to sort of preserve some of those benefits, but also minimize some of those real legitimate risks too.
And who do you think is ultimately holding center on that question? Like, I think the federal government at this point, it's a sort of state by state thing. Is that the governor in your mind? Is that state education chiefs? Who most should feel in the hot seat for confronting the problem or the opportunity that you're naming?
I think we all should feel in the hot seat. I mean, this is a technology that is broadly playing out across the economy and society, and so that there's personal responsibility that comes with that. There's obviously institutional responsibilities at the state level, at the district level too, at the state level, and then also at the national level. Like I will say, like I think I have seen more bipartisan concern about this at the federal level. There's concern about it. They're not sure what to do, and so the solution is where there's still a lot of debate. And I'd say that happens at the state level too. A number of attorney generals have, um, launched investigations in a bipartisan way. So I think everyone is like attuned to the concern here. What we need is some robust policy innovations of what's the best way of handling it. Then we also need tools because Jessica, you mentioned this. I often it's moms are the ones that find out their kids are talking to an AI companion, and it's scary and it's alarming. But it's also that's a good sort of segue too of like I think it's important for us to think about three categories of this. There's AI companions, the things like character AI and replica that are purposely built to develop a relationship and be a friend. That's a very different type of programming and orientation of an AI tool. There's these Gen AI tools like Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT that could be used for that. It's general. Like people might use it, they may not use it. And then there's people who deploy this in developers, and that's like Conmigo would be a good example where they deploy around some of the capabilities, they shut off other capabilities. And I think that's like a little bit of a spectrum. Like deployers give us a little bit more safety and precaution for education than like a character AI. The Gen AI tools are a little bit murky, but that gives us a little bit of a spectrum to think about like what should be allowed and what should be gated and what should not be allowed.
Is anybody getting this right now? Like, who are you looking to saying they're making the right moves on the policy side or the implementation side in the education sector?
In the education sector, Louisiana, I think, is doing some good work. I think they're approaching it with curiosity and with pilots, and I think that's like the right approach right now. You want districts writing policy, you want to run some pilots and see what you can learn from it. Virginia, I think, with Governor Youngkin had done a pretty good policy in terms of requiring districts to develop their own sort of acceptable use policies. But I don't know. I think every state is a different point of the journey here. But many are getting this like right. I think where I think some things are underdeveloped is that the natural instinct for a lot of SEAs is to say, what should we require of districts? I'd love to see more imagination of what they could be using Gen AI for their own operations or their own services. And and that's everything from like school report card information. Like by now, it should be easy for a parent to just have a conversation with school data and like that's easy. Hallucinations can be taken care of, but
Yep.
like we should be exploring other ways of like taking so much of what's been inaccessible or complicated or technical at the state level and see how we can make that easier to navigate and access with districts that we serve, but also with the parents that we serve too.
Yeah. As a person who spends a lot of time thinking about accountability report cards, it's helpful to hear that example. Let's fast forward 10 years, not 3 years, but 10 years. What does responsible success of AI in education look like to you?
Well, in 10 years, so I tweeted about this the other day. This last December was a very disorienting time for me because like I feel like half of my feed were people talking about Claude code and that the agents it was spinning up and the tasks it was performing, and they were all declaring that this was AGI. AGI being this sort of nebulous but goal that a lot of the frontier labs have of like a super intelligent AI system. That was half of my feed. And then I was talking to a pretty successful and very well respected DC consultant who was very dismissive because ChatGPT 5 was like hallucinating bios or making up a bunch of different things. So he's like, it's not something you can rely on. And then most of my mom's friends had never used ChatGPT. And I felt like I was living in three different realities. Like people who just have never been exposed to even basic ChatGPT. And then on the other hand, people who are literally saying a super intelligent AI agent is here. And I think in most times when I talk to people in education, they've not fully experienced what an agent is like, and it's hard to wrap their head around. But it's agents, I think in 10 years are going to be the predominant way that a lot of work gets done. And we as educators, we as policymakers, we as consultants will be managing a group of agents that will be doing tasks for us. And I know that sounds like science fiction, but I mean, in just the few months that I've been playing with some of these agents, you see it, and I think that's amazing for teachers. It means they'll have like a whole team of teaching assistants that can help them on a whole bunch of different tasks. But even, and again, this will sound like science fiction, they will work as a team of agents themselves, talking and interacting with one another, reflecting on what each other is saying, and then coming back with something. That's again, like I know it sounds like science fiction, but there's a number of tools right now that will do that. And I think that's going to be powerful. It means like every teacher will be able to generate their own ed report, green level quality of content and curriculum and other things. You'll have a coherence agent that will make sure it's coherent with things. But I think that's like pretty powerful in terms of looking at where the future is. And again, like it sounds like science fiction, but there's enough tools. And my own experience in the last like 60 days, I would say, is like said, like, yeah, this is something happening much faster than
This
I
is
think
very
we
exciting.
appreciate. Yeah.
Final question. If you are an educator out there, state chief, state deputy, teacher, superintendent who's interested, but maybe only, flirting with the more basic uses of ChatGPT, where should they and I be going to build our skill or build our knowledge?
The easiest way to think about this, whether it's an agent or just you, or if you just want to say, how do I get more out of Gemini, Claude, or ChatGPT? You have to think of these things as a remote employee, as a who's super smart. But like what I find is like most people that dismiss this, it's because the prompts they're writing are either they look like a Google prompt or they're too simplistic. They're like one or two sentences. And the thing is like if you think about it as you have a remote worker, what would you email your remote worker? Or what would
Yeah.
you email your remote contractor? You want to just send a PDF and say, summarize this. Because like the summary could be paragraphs, it could be bullets, it could be a whole page, it could be one paragraph. You have to be directive as a manager to say, to say what you want, and then you have to give it context, like why this is important or what's your situation. And then you also want to describe how you want the results presented to you. If you think of it that way, all of a sudden, first of all, you're not writing two sentence prompts, you're writing paragraph prompts. Like a
Right.
lot of my prompts right now probably are 500 words. Some of the prompts I wrote with my mom are like 3 pages long. And I know that sounds overwhelming, but if you think about it, all of us every single day when we hire a consultant, we write a scope of work, and that is essentially a prompt. And also, when we give work to a consultant, we give them context. We share some past documents for examples. We share some, information or financials to give some awareness of it. If you just think of it that way and give the context and the direction, magic tends to happen. If you still don't know how to write a good prompt, just go into ChatGPT or one of the tools and just say, okay, I need a prompt that will do X, Y, or Z. Here's my situation. And it'll write the prompt for you. And then just copy and paste it into the prompt. I know that says meta, but like,
So you
that's
have it
part.
write its own prompt for
Yeah, it's how
itself.
to write its own prompt. Yeah. So you go, if you're like, I don't know how to get it to analyze my school data. Well, just say, ChatGPT, I need a prompt to help me analyze the data. I want to understand Title I kids, trend rates, and special ed kids and their correlation or relationship or something. I mean, something like that. And it will write the prompt for you, cut and paste it, and then, it gets you 80% of the way there. If you still don't know what to do, just say, I'm a state chief working in this, or I'm a superintendent. Give me 10 ways I can use this and give me the associated prompts, and it'll do that too. But approach it with curiosity, let it do the work for you. So let it write its own prompt. But, in this world, like, you have to think almost as like you're hiring a consultant. What's the scope of work? What's the direction? And you have to be a good manager of these things, whether it's ChatGPT or an agent. You have to give it like really good direction.
I love that. Any final word?
No, look, I'm excited. Like I spent a lot of time thinking about AI risks, and we just talked about some of the mental health harms and societal risks there. But I think this is going to unlock a lot of opportunity for kids and for teachers. And so, but I think it's up to us. I think it's up to people you work with every day, the leaders, to steer this, because it's not going to naturally sort of gravitate in the direction we want it. We have to steer it, and that's a leadership issue. It's not a technical issue.
Yeah, love that. Well, thank you, John, as always. And for those of you listening in today, thanks for joining.